Dr. Denise or myself in a seminar. But we are both third-generation chiropractors, and if my Prezi here will start working, I'll show you my family. We come from a long line of chiropractors. We have my grandfather and his two brothers were the first chiropractors in our family, and I'm really proud of that. We have about 12 active members of my family that are chiropractors. So, this is not just something that we talk about in theory. I've been in many of my family's practices. I graduated in 1991. I immediately started working for my uncle, and my uncle saw about 150 people a day, 3 days a week. So it was a great practice to really learn from, and I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly in chiropractic, and I really feel that we need to start to think about the way that we want to practice into the future, and that's really was the impetus behind 8 Weeks to Wellness. My sister and I, it's kind of a blessing getting to practice with your twin sister, especially when she's held you accountable your whole life. My sister just has the utmost integrity, probably more integrity than any other person I've ever met. And she just won't let me fail, and she won't let me cheat, so which is a good thing. But we always wanted to run our practice and knew back in the early 90s, even when insurance was still lucrative, we saw the writing on the wall. We recognized that we couldn't sustain this model of an insurance type of a practice where we were 90% insurance and 10% cash. And not only that is we just didn't feel that our patients really valued their care because they weren't paying out of pocket for it. And to be quite honest, it wasn't the way that our family was raised. My dad ran a practice. We had a home office, so I had the blessings of really seeing my dad's patients, and he charged cash. It was $13 an adjustment, and we did okay. We weren't with the wealthiest family in town, but we certainly had a nice life. And as I got into chiropractic and really start to see some of the things that would turn my stomach a little bit, I recognized that that's not what I wanted for myself and my practice. And that was just the financial side. The clinical side was, back in the early 90s, I was taking James Chestnut's courses, and I absolutely love the wellness model of chiropractic because I think it comes down to one thing. You either believe that subluxation has an underlying cause or you don't. And if you believe that it does, and I do believe that it does, you have to ask yourself the next logical question, and that is, what's my responsibility as a chiropractor to help my patients live a chiropractic lifestyle, learn what's creating their subluxations, become more independent in their mind and in their behaviors so that they don't subluxate themselves. And I kind of liken it to illiteracy. When my children were young, I would read to them, and eventually it got to the point where I would read a page and then they would read a page, and before you know it, they were reading the whole book. And I feel that way. I think it's a good metaphor with our patients. We've got to teach them. It's the old saying, give a man a fish he eats for a day, teach a man a fish he eats for a lifetime. And this process of 8 Weeks to Wellness, it's always interesting because one of the most common questions that I get from patients and also from doctors is, what happens after the 8 weeks? And it's just a natural progression, guys. I never knew it when we named it 8 Weeks to Wellness, but I think there was some brilliance in there because people can do something for 8 weeks. They can commit to something. That's why The Biggest Loser is such a success. People in their mind say, I can do anything for 8 weeks. But the 8 weeks is simply a metaphor because just like I used the example of reading, once you learn to read, you got that in your back pocket. That's a skill that you've attained and you can use for the rest of your life. And likewise, once people have learned how to eat healthy, once they've learned to get adjusted and why they should be adjusted, why their kids should be adjusted, once they learn how to exercise functionally, once they learn how to use their mind properly, these are skills that they're going to be not only be able to have in their back pocket, they're going to be able to teach it to their family and their friends. And so I have to tell you that this is the most wonderful type of practice because now we're 60% cash. We used to be, 10 years ago, we were 10% cash and 90% insurance. And now we're 60% cash and 40% insurance, and we have a $2 million practice. So we collect a lot of money in our practice. So I always, anytime I'm talking, I talk about the two rules I live my life by. And the one rule, if I can get my my Prezi to work here, I was never on the AV crew in high school, and I really regret that decision to this day. But the two rules I live my life by is the first rule is you can't have it both ways. And so what I mean by that is that you've got to decide what you want in practice. And I meet so many chiropractors that truly don't know what they want in practice. And so you've got to decide what is it that you're willing, what's important to you. I decided a while ago, and it wasn't really that long ago, but I recognized that there was a time in my life I was a really good golfer. I had almost a single-digit handicap, but I was investing a tremendous amount of time in golf between practicing and playing. And it got to a point when I had my wife and my children and also had my practice and started to develop 8 Weeks to Wellness, I had to ask myself a really important question. Do I want to be the greatest golfer that I can be, or do I want to be the greatest husband and chiropractor and father that I can be? And I'm not telling you that you shouldn't play golf. I'm just saying, for me personally, I recognize that there's only 168 hours in a week, and I've got to commit my time to something. There's about 120 waking hours in a week, and so I don't play a lot of fantasy football. I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't play a lot of golf anymore. I still play and I still enjoy it, but I recognize I want to be a better chiropractor. I want to leave my stamp on this world by showing people how to live a healthy lifestyle. In the wake of what happened in Newtown, Connecticut, guys, we have such work to do with our society, and if we don't do it, if we don't start teaching people how to live a healthy lifestyle, then really who's going to do it? The other motto I live my life by is, who you are speaks so loudly that I can't hear what you say. And so, that's such a great saying, and so you've got to live your life by your actions. And what I mean by that, if you really wanted to know about a person, you've got to look at 2 things: where they spend their time and where they spend their money. And if I were taking notes, I'd write that down, because that had a profound impact on me when I learned that. So if you really want to know about me, for example, come spend some time in my home. Come spend some time in my practice. Come meet my friends. Come meet my family. And without me even opening my mouth, you'll know everything that you need to know about me. And I would say likewise, if I were to come to your practice, follow you around in your home, watch what you do when no one's watching, it would tell me everything I need to know about you. And so we've got to hold ourselves to a higher standard, guys. We've got to be the role model. Again, be the change that you wish to see in the world. We've got to be that change, and we've got to live that change. And that's what that saying means to me, that who you are speaks a lot louder than what you say. And I see so much in Facebook and seminars, all this chest thumping going on. And that doesn't mean a hill of beans to me. What means a hill of beans is your family and your practice. And do you enjoy your practice? Do you love going to the office? I have to tell you, I absolutely love going to the office. And I've been put in a dilemma the past couple of years, because 8 Weeks to Wellness is really taking off, and it's taken a lot more of my time. But I truly love doing what I do as a chiropractor. And so I always, say you can't have it both ways. We talked about that. One of my goals with all of my centers that we're now coaching, we have 46. So I'm on the phone regularly with doctors, is I expect all of my centers to have $1 million practice. I have 3 doctors that I've worked with in the past year that have crossed the $1 million threshold in cash, not cash collections, total collections, but they've seen their cash collections go significantly up. And so that's my goal. When we take on an 8 Weeks to Wellness center, I truly believe that you should get paid commensurate to the level of service and value that you create in this world. And so again, let's not skip over that. I would write that down, but you should be paid in direct proportion to the level of service and value that you create for others. And so if you're not creating $1 million worth of service, you shouldn't expect to get paid $1 million. But I know without a doubt what we do and some of the changes that we've seen in our patients, we should expect to collect a lot of money, because we're creating a lot of value, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, guys. The having $1 million practice is a lot easier than what you think, and if you just break it down to the numbers, this is really what I try to teach chiropractors. To have $1 million practice, you've got to focus on 3 things. You've got to see 28 new patients a month. You've got to collect $50 per visit, and that's everything. That's your x-rays, that's your exams, that's your supplements, that's any ancillary services that you provide, like training or massage. You've got to collect $50 on average. So you just take the number of patient visits and you divide that into your total collections per month. That's going to give you your per patient collection average. And then your PVA, which everyone has a hard time with, and we'll talk about that, needs to be at 60 per patient. And that's their lifetime of care. And again, a lot of people have talked about from stage, how many times are you going to get adjusted in a lifetime? I know I'm going to get adjusted at least 52 times just this year, because I get adjusted once a week, and sometimes I get adjusted more than that. So again, we just expect you to raise the level of consciousness and awareness so that you don't have that pain-based practice, that you truly have a wellness practice. And we'll talk about how to do that in just a second. So what's the biggest obstacle to you having $1 million practice? And I would write this down. It's utilization. The biggest problem that I see in chiropractic right now is that we don't have enough people using chiropractic on a regular basis, so we haven't reached that tipping point. And again, if you've seen myself or Dr. Denise speak, we always talk about the law of diffusion of innovation. You can Google that and research that like we did, but all innovation, and I like to use the iPhone, for example. The iPhone came out in 2007, okay? So we're talking roughly 5 years ago, and when I speak to audiences, I ask people to raise their hand if they have an iPhone. And I see that at least 50% of the room raises their hand. So we've had a saturation or utilization of the Apple iPhone into society, right, in 5 years, 50%. So guys, we've been around as a chiropractic profession for well over 100 years. And so my question is, why haven't we diffused into society like an iPhone? Is an iPhone more important than a chiropractic adjustment or chiropractic care? And I always like to make the distinction between chiropractic care and a chiropractor's care. And I hope you understand the distinction. Chiropractic care is an adjustment, but a chiropractor's care is an adjustment plus the education that goes along with teaching people how to live a healthy lifestyle. So if you take a look at some of the things that have diffused, we have 66% of Americans that are overweight, 73% of the people in our country that are using the internet, 61% of society takes a prescription drug every single year. I mean, that's disgusting. You look at they finally figured out what drug this kid was on in Connecticut, and he was on a psychotropic drug that's known to cause suicide and violent tendencies in children. I mean, that's absolutely disgusting. And you know, I'm Irish, so I get angry every once in a while, but when I think about those poor children and this dude, I think, what if this kid had had a chiropractor in his life? What if his mom had known to take him to a loving chiropractor who started adjusting him, started teaching him a chiropractic philosophy, changed his diet, got him on some good fish oils, started loving this kid? You know what? I believe in my heart that things would have been different for a lot of people. And so, you know, when I talk about this, guys, I'm talking from the heart, man. We got some work to do. So pony up, you know. We gotta really start to think about what we want our practices to be like and what kind of impact we want to have on the people in our community. And I'll tell you what, now looking back, I go out into our community and people know 8 Weeks to Wellness. You know, we've been able to create 9 local offices that we now work with and mastermind with that all do 8 Weeks to Wellness. So we're not you know, separate islands unto ourselves. We get together on a regular basis. We do group accountability, group marketing. It's just become a wonderful thing. And so I always say we'll never increase our utilization until what people need becomes as important as what they want. So think about that. People want to have an iPhone. That's why they went out and bought one. You know, so how do we switch that in if you think about it, chiropractic, most people think, I need to get adjusted, right? But when we can flip that in their mind where they say, I want to get adjusted. I don't need to. I want to. Then we'll start to see the utilization rates in our society really increase. We also have to think about what brand perception we have out in the market. And you know, my buddy Patrick talks about this all the time, but you know, all you got to do is walk out into your community and start asking people, you know, what does a chiropractor do? And you know, after you vomit in your hands because they give you some lame-ass answer like he cracks backs or they help with back pain, you gotta realize that we've got a big job to do. So I think if you go to some of the seminars, like I always do, you know, go to CalJam and go to Parker and go to some of these seminars, you know, amongst ourselves, we look at ourselves as subluxation freedom fighters. You know, we're out there trying to correct subluxation, free innate, let people reconnect, you know, the physical to the spiritual. And guys, I grew up with that. I get it, you know, but we've got to do a better job because when I ask the public, I never get answers like that, you know, reuniting man the spiritual with man the physical, you know. And, you know, every once in a while when somebody's been to my class like 3 or 4 times, they start to get it. But we got to do a much better job. And I feel that unconsciously we're sending out this neuromusculoskeletal message of chiropractic. And I know from being in chiropractic for 44 years, you know, 21 years as a chiropractor, but 44 as a chiropractic patient, that we've pigeonholed ourselves. You know, people don't think of us as somebody who is true wellness doctor. They think of us as somebody who can help them with pain, right? And so the public's brand perception of us as pain management doctors, back crackers, they pop your bones. I mean, it's absolutely disgusting when I hear some of the people talk about chiropractic and what they think it is. And that's the good things they say about chiropractic, right? So one of the people I had the fortune of hearing this year was Sean Dill. And, you know, he said something that really made me think. He said, you know, most chiropractors are seeing about 10% of the population. And by the way, we're not seeing them on a regular basis. But he said we're recirculating the same 10% of chiropractic believers amongst ourselves. And we've got to really start to reach out to the other 90% of the population that doesn't necessarily believe in chiropractic. And so how do we do that? And I thought that was such a great thought for me to say that's really what we're trying to do in creating this wellness model. We're trying to get people to understand that, guess what, if they see a wellness chiropractor, if they participate in a wellness program like 8 Weeks to Wellness that includes chiropractic adjustment and nutrition and fitness and mind-body practices, guess what? Their diabetes is going to clear up. Their heart disease is going to get better. They're not going to be as susceptible to site-specific cancers. And we know all the research, but we've got to get the public to understand that if they see a chiropractic wellness doctor, they are going to be much better off in terms of preventative care. And by the way, whether you know it or not, more people, make decisions based on feeling. So, I don't like this any more than you do, but the fear of somebody getting cancer or diabetes or the fear of them getting heart disease is a much stronger motivator in the short term, and that's what we're talking about, guys. We're talking about somebody making a short-term decision to get into a program that then can create long-term outcomes. So I love this study here. It's called the Healthy American Study, and it's kind of hard to read, but I'll read it to you. They surveyed 1,000 people, and they asked them, basically, do you want to be healthy? And when they asked them, 85% of the population said, of course I want to be healthy, right? So they said, well, what changes have you thought about making to get yourself healthier? And this is what they said. 56% of the respondents said exercise, 45% said diet and eating better, 13% said losing weight, 7% said stop smoking, and 4% said get a new job, which means decrease the stress in my life. And so when they asked the public, what do you do to get yourself healthy? I want to know why at least 1% didn't say, go get a chiropractic adjustment. Okay, so you can say anything you want, guys, but what the public thinks is we're not wellness doctors. Because if they thought that, they would have said, I'm going to go see my chiropractor is what I'm going to do to get healthy. And so we need to confront the brutal reality and stop, slapping ourselves on the back, telling ourselves that we're doing such a great job. I totally believe that we can reverse this trend of being pigeonholed into back pain, but we got some absolute work to do, and we got to roll up our sleeves and get to work. One of the things that I teach when we teach how to really create any type of a model, whether that's an 8 Weeks to Wellness model in your practice or any type of wellness model or even your chiropractic model of practice, if I were to come to your office and say, hey, show me your operational manual or show me how you run your practice, it's basically 4 things that you have to focus on. Number 1, you've got to attract believers, and believers are new patients, so you've got to identify who are you going after. Guys, there's so many chiropractors, right? You've got to have some sort of a unique selling proposition, and 8 Weeks to Wellness is it for us, but you also got to attract the right staff. I see so many chiropractors, I go into their practices, and their staff are so disengaged. They don't believe what the chiropractor believes, and I know it because who you are speaks so loudly I can hear what you say. They don't exercise. They obviously don't engage in nutrition, They don't get adjusted on a regular basis, and I'm not saying all staff, but a large portion of the chiropractic staff that I see when I go into practice aren't engaged. And so I would ask you, who is your ideal new patient, right? Can you really identify and see that person? And then also, we never ask this question enough in chiropractic, but who's your ideal new employee? I feel so blessed because some of the employees, and one of them is on the line right now, who I recently started working with, is a dear friend of mine, Laura, and Laura believes what I believe. And I want people like that on my team. I want to work with people that get as excited about making a change in this world as I do. I don't want people coming to my office to pick up a paycheck. And so we do regular staff meetings. We take our staff to seminars. We take our staff out. We wine and dine them. I regularly buy my staff gift certificates on a regular basis to surprise them and to make them feel like they're an important part of our team. So attracting believers, your staff will make or break your practice, guys. And so start investing time and energy back into your staff. Most chiropractors that I talk to don't even do a regular staff meeting. It's almost embarrassing, and they expect their staff to know what to do. I mean, it's just not going to happen that way. The next step is to build the model, and we always say first who, then what. You can't build a model without the right people in place. And so in our office, we built this 8 Weeks to Wellness model, Dr. Denise and I, over a 1.5-year process. We thought about what's the exercise we want. We want functional-based exercise. What's the nutritional program we want? Is a very South Beach type of a diet where it's low glycemic index. We're trying to get people to eat as raw and natural as possible, but we're also trying to meet them where they are. I talk to a lot of the paleo people, and I get it. I would love for people to totally give up grains, but when you have somebody who's been eating grains their whole life, and then all of a sudden you're going to try to flip the switch and get them to go paleo, you're going to lose them. I know it because I've been doing this, but if you bring them up the ladder, if you take them from first grade to second grade, paleo to me is like a high school level or college level curriculum as far as nutrition. So you got to meet them where they are and bring them up the ladder, and that's what we do with 8 Weeks to Wellness. So we also wanted to think about what type of meditation we want people doing. We also had to wrap that around the concept of being time sensitive. So, the whole program can be done in 5 hours of a person's time. And I always say, when you have 120 waking hours and we're asking you for 5% of your time, if you tell me that you don't have 5% of your time to invest back into your own health, I'm going to look at you in the eyes as your doctor and say, you've got your priorities screwed up. Because that 5% investment is going to affect the whole other 95% of the things that you think are so important. So I know your job and being a mother and being a husband and all the things that you got on your plate are important, but there's nothing more important than your energy level and being committed to your health, because that's going to have a payoff that's going to affect the other 95%. My wife always tells me she's amazed at how much I can get done in a day. I wake up regularly at 4:30. I was up at 4:30 this morning. I go to bed generally at about 10 o'clock at night, and I'll tell you guys the reason I do that is because I got a lot of stuff to get done in a day, and the word energy, if you define it, and you should for your patients, you should write this down. Energy equals, write this down, energy equals the capacity to do work. So there's a proportionate amount of energy and work that's getting done. So your patients, the ones that don't have energy, they can't get crap done because they don't have energy. They're fatigued. And why are they fatigued? Because they're not treating their body with respect. And so I teach my patients, when you treat your body with respect, when you start to engage in health behaviors, you're going to see your energy go up. You're going to see yourself sleeping better. And that energy is going to result in you being able to get more done in a day than it used to take you 3 days to do. And then the third thing is you need to demonstrate results. And so we made it a point to really develop out this whole model of 8 Weeks to Wellness before we even took it into another chiropractor's office. So we ran 8 Weeks to Wellness in our office for a good 2-3 years and really worked out the kinks in the model before then we put it into 2 chiropractic offices as a test market. And then we ran it in their office for another 2 or 3 years to run out the kinks in terms of how were we going to implement in the other offices. And now 10 years later, lo and behold, we're 46 centers strong. And by the way, we go through an application process, so we don't take anybody. You've got to really, to me, you've got to be committed. And so I interview you, and I want you to interview me. I want you to come see my practice if that's what you desire. I want to get to know you as a person before I bring you into this family, because the last thing I want to do, and I get tingles when I say this, is to tarnish this brand that my sister and I have put our blood, sweat, and tears in. So we want to make sure that you're ready to do the work that it takes to become an 8 Weeks to Wellness center. And then the final concept, which tends to be the first concept for most chiropractors, and I'll tell you why in a second, is to build your brand. And so I want to know why the most frequently asked question when you go to seminars is, how do I get more new patients? And to me, that's a brand question. How do I attract more new patients is a brand question. And I'll tell you, how you attract more new patients is that you attract the right team. You know your ideal new patient. You have a model in your practice where you deliver on the promise of what you're making to your patients. So if you're promising that you're going to get healthy, well then darn it, you better deliver those results. You should be able to demonstrate results objectively, and you should also have a financial result as well. One of the things I love is that we collect a lot of cash. When I go out and talk to people in seminars, one of the questions I frequently ask is, raise your hand if you collect $1 million. And of the audiences that I speak to, generally about 5% of the audience, maybe 5%, that's kind of a really healthy number, will raise their hand. Then I ask the second question. I want you to keep your hands raised if you collect over $1 million in cash, and then all the hands go down. So I want to know why we as a chiropractic profession aren't collecting $1 million cash when we have $1 million worth of value that we're creating in people's lives. And so again, we got some work to do, guys, even on the financial side, to get off the insurance tit, right, and start to really run our practices so that people are paying us out of pocket because they value what we do so much that you'd have to beat them away with a stick to keep them out of your office. So I always say that, human beings will line up for miles to buy a bucket of catastrophes, but don't try selling them sunshine and light or you'll go broke. So, selling wellness isn't as easy as selling somebody who comes in with a hot disc. Anybody who's in pain, they have urgency about their care. So selling wellness is difficult, and so that's something I want to talk to you about for just a second. there's a concept, and this is from a book called The Power of Habit, which I would really suggest that you read. One of my favorite books in the past year by a guy named Charles Duhigg, Duhriggg. And what he said, he goes into this in the book, he said at the turn of the 20th century, back in the early 1900s, only about 7% of the population brushed their teeth. So can you imagine? And by the way, it wasn't because they didn't have toothbrushes. There were tooth powders and toothpaste and toothbrushes that were available, but just people didn't brush their teeth, right? And so there was a guy came along, his name was Claude Hopkins, and he was hired by Colgate for $1 million back then, if you can imagine. This guy must have been pretty powerful and pretty good at what he does. But he got people to recognize, he created a term called plaque. And so, if you think plaque was invented by a dentist, you're wrong. It was actually invented by a marketeer. And he got the whole world thinking about plaque, right? Not about pain, not about holes in their teeth, but to literally think about this film on their teeth that was making their teeth dirty and dingy. And so he created a signal for people to brush their teeth beyond pain. It's easy when your teeth hurt to go to the dentist, but how do you get people to participate in a behavior that's going to help them every single day? And so what he did is he created what he calls his Hopkins laws. He said the first thing you need to do is find a simple and obvious cue that people need your service or product. And so for him, he created this whole concept of plaque and then went about educating and marketing people on the concept of plaque. Not pain, but plaque. And so I'm going to ask you as a chiropractor, what's the cue that somebody needs a chiropractic adjustment, right? And ask yourself, what are most people coming into your office with new patients? When you sit down with a new patient and you ask them, hey, Mary, what's the reason for your visit today? Does she look at you and say, you know what, doc, I'm just not as healthy as I'd like to be. Or you know what, doc, I recognize that my behavior isn't congruent with health, so I want to drop 20. I want to start exercising, and I know you're the guy who can help me. No, that's not what they say. Most chiropractors' offices, they say, I got headaches, I got back pain, I got pain going down my leg, A lot of chiropractic offices, to their credit, you have children coming in to get checked and scanned, and that's awesome, right? But I would say the majority of your new patients and majority of chiropractic new patients out there are symptomatic new patients. And so what's the signal? It's symptoms. And what happens after the signal or the symptom goes away? Well, guess what? Now you know why chiropractors have such a low PVA. The average PVA in the chiropractic profession is between 12 and 16, okay? So that's pretty pitiful, because that means that people are leaving you after they get out of pain. The second thing that this Claude Hopkins says is that you've got to define a reward for people to engage in your product or service. So when they started putting mint into toothpaste, it reminded people that minty, fresh feeling in your mouth, that every time you brushed your teeth, you brushed your plaque away. Now, every single toothpaste out there now puts mint in their toothpaste. Think about it. And mint has no cleaning or benefit to your teeth. So the only reason they put mint into toothpaste, guys, is to remind you that every time you brush your teeth are healthier, they're cleaner, they feel better and fresher. So think about that. What's the reward for somebody to engage in your care? So I always say people need a signal not only to think about you, why should I go see that chiropractor, but they need a reward to crave you. That's one of the reasons we created something called the wellness score. So I wanted people to feel the effects of their physiology. We always know that physiology most of the time is silent. Their subluxations are silent. Their heart disease is silent. Their diabetes is silent until it becomes a crisis or a chronic enough problem like a disc that's been degenerating for years that finally herniates or bulges and puts pressure on a nerve. So when's the right time to expect a person to engage in their health? It's before they get the symptom, obviously, but they need some sort of a signal or sign, and that's why we created the wellness score. We've been using biometrics in 8 Weeks to Wellness for years, but Miles Boston of Cash Practice helped me to really refine this into a system for chiropractors to use so that you can use any biometrics to show your patients beyond symptoms why they need your care. And I always love Pearson's Law because Pearson's Law says that when performance is measured, performance improves. But when performance is measured and reported back, the rate of improvement accelerates dramatically. So think about that. I played sports, and I had something called a coach, right? And so, I did a CrossFit workout, for example. This is a really good thing. So every time I finished my CrossFit workouts, it's timed, my reps are timed, and it makes me think about my performance. I don't just go about my exercise, but when I know that I'm timed and I know that I'm trying to beat my best time or I'm trying to beat my best rep or I'm doing an AMRAP, it puts not pressure, but it puts a consciousness in my mind that I want to do better. And it's the same thing for your patients, guys. When you show them a wellness score, which I'll show you in just a second, and you show them that their BMI is 33 and a normal BMI is 20, 25, it's going to get into their head. If you show them that their body fat is 36%, which I regularly see in women, and they should have a body fat of 25%, it's going to start to alert them that they need to change these physiological parameters, and that we can start to measure this and show them changes along the way. And I just love Pearson's Law. So we created the wellness score with 4 categories, right? So we measure 4 categories of a person's health in our office. First and most important is their neurospinal health. Second is their general health. Third is their functional health, their functional fitness. And fourth is their biochemical health. So how do we do that? We create literally in our exam, and I don't have the time to get into it, and if you're more interested, you can go to Cash Practice, or you can go to thewellnessscore.com, www.thewellnessscore.com, and watch the tutorial that I created simply on what we're going to go over in the next 5 minutes. So the wellness score in office, and I'll show you this in just a second, creates a report. So whatever biometrics that you decide to use, which I'll show you in a second, you create a report for the patient. And so then those biometrics get broken out into the categories. So in this report here, we didn't do any lab work. And by the way, I'll show you in a second, we do 2 wellness scores in our office. We do one for all of our chiropractic patients, and we do one for all of our 8 weeks to wellness patients that includes labs. So this would be a chiropractic exam where we look at their functional fitness, we look at their general health, and we look at their neurospinal health. And then we use this graphic here to show them how they're doing in each category. So this person got a D in functional fitness, and they got an F in their general health, and they got a D plus in their neurospinal health, and their overall wellness score was a D. So I can look at a person and say, Mary, we did your wellness score, we measured your physiology and your how your body is functioning, and right now, what your report told me is that your health right now is a D, and let me show you how we arrived at that, and then I'll go through their wellness score. And then we come up, I'm very problem-solution focused. So once I see a person's wellness score, for example, if their neurospinal health is really bad, which it normally is, they need chiropractic care. If their functional fitness is horrible, they need to start training. If their biochemical health is really out of whack, they need to do a nutritional program. So I love the fact that the biometrics help me to identify the problem specifically for my patients. So once you identify the problem, the solution becomes self-evident, and I'm not basing their care on some cookie-cutter 3-2-1 model of chiropractic care, but I'm truly basing it on their physiology and what their body is telling me, and I come up with recommendations and show them in this report that you need chiropractic care, you need some fitness training, you may need some massage, and that's how we do it. And then from there, if you're familiar with Cash Practice, it creates a Cash Practice plan or a financial plan for the patient where we give them options. They can pay up front and get 10% off of their care plan. And by the way, we have 2 care plans we do in our office. It's a 2-month plan or a 3-month plan. 8 weeks to wellness is 2 months, obviously 8 weeks. Or if they're not doing 8 weeks to wellness, we tell them it's going to take longer because it's not as regimented and as intense a program. So we do 12 weeks before we do their first exam. I believe, and this is just what I believe, you don't have to believe what I believe that every 12 visits is a pain model of chiropractic. So you may do checks along the way, but I'm going to do another wellness score after 2 or 3 months because it's going to take a while to see changes, dramatic changes in their physiology. So I don't want to just do re-exams to see if their pain is getting better. I want to do re-exams to see if their health is getting better. So we do our re-exams at 8 weeks and at 12 weeks. And then for the analytical person, it takes all that biometric data in the report and it breaks it down to the biometrics that you measure. So BMI, diastolic pressure, whatever you choose to measure. And the cool thing about this is that these are all the parameters that we've loaded into the program. So there's tons of parameters. You can use all of them, 1 of them, 2 of them to create your wellness score. So, you know, what I suggest chiropractors do is you work backwards. What type of a practice do you have? If you have a strictly chiropractic practice, then you're going to use chiropractic biomarkers. If you have a practice like ours where we do functional fitness, you're going to start to incorporate some of these general health parameters like BMI and waist to hip ratio. If you truly want a wellness practice, you're going to start to incorporate some of the lab measurements that we do, like triglyceride to HDL ratio and cholesterol to HDL ratio and hemoglobin A1C and CRP and all these other things. And it's very easy to learn this system. You know, I've talked to a lot of chiropractors, and one of my good buddies, Tony Ebel, said that this tool has revolutionized his practice. He's up 40%, and he didn't have a crappy practice before, but this year he's up 40%, and his cash is up tremendously, and he believes it's because using this wellness score helps him to really identify why a person needs care beyond symptomatic care. And this is the wellness score that we use in our office, by the way. You'll see our wellness score for just our chiropractic new patients. We look at things like diastolic blood pressure, resting heart rate, BMI, waist-to-hip ratio, which is a measurement of truncal body fat. We look at phase angle, which is a BIA measurement, which measures body composition. We do 4-core flexibility, 4-core strength tests. Most of these parameters my staff does. There are some parameters like the core flexibility and strength testing. I use an FMS type of a test. Then we use the NSFI like a lot of you are using. But what you can see here in X-ray and digital postural pictures, but what you can see here, it gives the person an overall wellness grade. The other wellness score that we do in our office, you'll see here, is the 8 weeks to wellness. And so it's all of these parameters that you see here, but it also incorporates all of the lab work. So if you look down towards the bottom, you see C-reactive protein and homocysteine and glucose and hemoglobin A1C. And we're basically looking at three things per se. We're looking for inflammation in our patients. We're looking for dyslipidemia, problems with lipids. And we're also looking for dysglycemia. And I love it, you know, guys, I love the fact that we can measure blood work because most chiropractors don't think about this. But let me tell you something. We can beat the pants off the medical profession at their own game. Not only can I measure lab work, but I can change their lab values without putting them on 14 frickin' medications, giving them a chiropractic lifestyle, and sending them back to their doctor with their wellness score and say, look, buddy, we could change their cholesterol with chiropractic adjustments and lifestyle modification. We took this person who you had on 3 medications for diabetes. They're no longer a diabetic, and I can't tell you how many patients we have like that. So guys, once we start showing the population that we can play this game of, you know, measuring physiology, and instead of putting them on 14 different prescription medications, we're going to put them on something called a wellness program to get them off all of these darn medications. This was an actual patient. I always love showing case studies, but this is a patient in our office. She started, when you looked at it, if you look at the highlighted parameter that I have up here, the BMI, when she started the program, guys, she was a BMI of 24, so you know that anything over 25 is considered normal. She was a very attractive woman. Her weight was good. She came into the office and said, I want to do 8 weeks to wellness. My mother did 8 weeks to wellness. So when I looked at her her initial score, I looked at her BMI and I looked at her body fat, and to be quite honest, it wasn't horrible. You know, normal body fat for her, this girl should probably be the low 20s. She was 26% body fat. But then when I ran her blood work, it was very interesting. Her insulin was 26. Now, normal insulin, I like to see around 5. So her insulin was 5 times higher than what it should be. And by the way, she told me she was on 2 antidepressants because one of the reasons she wanted to do 8 weeks to wellness so bad is she saw such an emotional change in her mother doing the program. She was happier. She had more energy. And this girl is a school teacher. So she said to me, listen, I work around kids all day long. I shouldn't be depressed. I shouldn't be on 2 antidepressants, and all I get when I go to my medical doctor is they want to put me on more medication. And this girl went in 8 weeks to wellness, 8 weeks, she went from a D to an A. She went from being on 2 prescription medications to being off from prescription medications. She did the program about a year ago. She's still a patient in her office, still gets adjusted, still works out, and still loves it. This is why I love this program, guys. It's there to get your patients off of these darn medications that they're taking, and especially the psychotropic drugs. And let me tell you something, when you start measuring physiology and you can start showing these doctors and the patients that you can change these numbers with a chiropractic lifestyle, you're going to feel better about yourself, and guess what? You're going to start to gain the respect of your colleagues. This is Mike, and I just want you to look at these pictures. That's Mike before, that's Mike after. So that's Mike before 8 weeks to wellness, and look at all of the belly fat he was carrying, you know. Think about how much insulin this dude was cranking out with all that belly fat, and how many cytokines and inflammatory molecules he was cranking out, okay? But look at him 8 weeks later. So he went from that to that. And Mike was a full-blown diabetic. He was on 5 different prescription medications when he started. He's now on 1 prescription medication. He did the program about a year and a half ago. He was referred by his cardiologist. That's right. We regularly get referrals from medical doctors because they know what we're all about. So when a person comes into their office and they want to do a lifestyle program, they refer them to our office. Okay, this is Regina. This is Regina before 8 weeks to wellness. This is Regina after 8 weeks to wellness. Guys, look at this picture, okay? That's an unhealthy woman, right? That's a healthy woman, okay? That's a person, even though she's 8 weeks younger, right? This woman here is 8 weeks chronologically older, but how much older is she biologically? She's a lot older biologically there than there. Right there, dude, she's a hottie. This girl loves it. She told me one of the reasons I did 8 weeks to wellness, and by the way, she did it with her boyfriend. She wanted to get her boyfriend healthy. She said, Dr. Dane, I need to get my sexy back. I don't feel sexy anymore. And let me tell you, she feels sexy now. Okay? So we got to change our brand image, and I'm going to speed things up a little bit because I want to kind of get to some of the things that you guys need to do. So all I'm going to say is that wellness needs to become a habit in your practice members' lives. And I would say for the most part, and you would agree with me, most people, wellness isn't a habit in their life. It's not something they're doing on a regular basis. So remember the other 90%. I think the problem that we have is that people don't see us as wellness specialists. And I've said this many times from stage and in webinars, but when people call to do our program who don't know anything about chiropractic, one of the common questions we get is, I want to do 8 weeks to wellness, but let me ask you, do I have to do the 8 weeks to, the chiropractic part of 8 weeks to wellness? I'd rather not do that. And what that's saying to me is they're saying, I want to do the wellness program, I want to get healthy, but what the heck does this chiropractic have to do with getting healthy? So they just don't know, right? So people don't see chiropractors that have anything to do with wellness. That's one of the problems. And the second problem is people are too busy to see the implications of wellness care in their own life. They don't recognize that 5% of investment they make in their own health should have a dramatic impact on their overall health. Okay? So I believe two things in my practice. First of all, I believe that healthcare is available without a prescription. I show this to my patients on a regular basis. I have it posted all over the office. It's on our PowerPoints that we show in our adjusting area. And I also show this all the time. I post it to Facebook. This is my quote, by the way. Don't let anybody steal this from me. It's what I want on my tombstone, right? This is the way I want to be remembered. You can't medicate your way out of a problem you behaved your way into. And people are behaving their way into bad health, and they can't drug their way out of it. They've got to behave their way out of it, and I really believe that chiropractors are positioned to teach people about this. And then we've got to script the critical moves for people, guys. They have problems. They want to be told what to do. And one of the brilliant things about 8 weeks to wellness, it's totally scripted. And I always tell my patients, listen, you're trending in a direction. You know, you're either over here in disease on the left side of this graphic, right, where you're taking multiple medications, where the quality of your life sucks, where your potential, you can't do the things that you want to do, or you're over here in optimal health, where you have 100% functioning, you know, you feel great every day, you can do everything that you want to do, you can outrun your kids. I always say that the saddest day, I have a 17 and 14-year-old, the saddest day in my life is going to be when they beat me in a foot race. But let me tell you something, I'm going to work my ass off, and I hope that's not until I'm 70 years old when they finally can beat me in a foot race, because guess what? I want my body to function at peak performance. And so you've got to tell your patients, they're trending. They're not standing still. They're either moving towards wellness or they're moving towards illness, and their behavior is going to be the decision maker to decide which way they're moving. And we always teach our patients there's three main areas they need to focus on, and this is what we focus on in 8 weeks to wellness. The physical stresses, the mental emotional stresses, and the biochemical stresses. So start teaching your patients that concept, the 3T concept of trauma and moving better, thoughts and thinking better, and then toxins, what are they putting into their body? So let's go through 8 weeks to wellness specifically, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'll talk about how you can get more information on 8 weeks to wellness, the specific aspects of the program. But we have a whole wellness program. It's wellness education, it's adjustments, it's functional training, it's a complete blood work, it's their pre and post wellness scores, it's massage, it's meditation, and it's all done in 5 to 6 hours of their time. This is a part of the manual. Every person gets a wellness kit that has a manual. It has a meditation CD in it. It has a blender bottle so that they can do their ultra meal shakes. What else? It has a T-shirt. It has a home exercise kit with exercises that we've created that if they want to do exercise on top of what we teach them here in the office, they can actually do that at home. So this is the manual. It also comes in the back of the manual with a log. So every day they're logging everything they're doing, their meals, how much water they drink, what exercise did they do that day, was it cardio, was it strength training, did they do it in an interval fashion or a steady pace fashion like just walking on the treadmill, did they get their adjustment that day, did they take their fish oils, everything is programmed. And all the research shows, guys, that when people do a wellness program, if they journal and write things down, their results double. So the people that journal and write things down, this is why we not only have them write things down, but we ask them to see their manual on a regular basis when they're getting adjusted or the trainers are training them, or the CAs even ask for this to see if they're logging in their book, because we find that people that log do the best on their program because they're fully engaged. It goes back to that Pearson's Law. You know, when you not only measure and you manage and you're being held accountable, your results are going to go up. And so we always say, why create the wheel? One of the common things I hear from chiropractors is, you know, I want to do my own thing. Well, guess what? Do your own thing, but it's taken me 10 years to perfect this. Dr. Denise and I, we have 46 centers. I've been through a lot of speed bumps. I've been through a lot of failures and mistakes. I've taken every failure and turned that into something that my centers can learn from. We have the marketing, we have the clinical program, we have everything. And so why you're going to create something that's going to take you a tremendous amount of time? And I always tell doctors, you know, they come into my practice and they look around, they're like, holy crap, you know, this is exactly what I want. You know, and then I'll hear from some of them say, well, you know what, I'm going to do this on my own. And I say, you know, if you could have done it on your own, you would have done it by now. You've been in practice 10 years. You talk about wellness. You want to create a wellness program. Let me ask you a question. Why haven't you done it yet, right? And the reason I'll tell you is just like I would tell an 8 weeks to wellness patient is because you don't have that supportive environment to help you and make sure that you're going to do it. And that's what we do with our doctors. Okay? So again, I would just ask if you're doing your own thing, please send me your clinical and your financial results. Send me your wellness scores. Send me your case studies. Send me your stats, right? Let me take a look at your tax return and see how much cash you're collecting in your practice. And I know this hits a little bit of a nerve with everybody, guys, but I'm a no BS guy. You know what? You want to come see my practice? You want to see my tax returns? You want to meet my family? You want to meet my friends? My door is wide open. I have nothing to hide. I'm so proud of what we created in my life personally, and I've made some big-time mistakes, guys, mistakes that I'm not really proud of. But I tell you what, where I am at my life at 45, I'm extremely proud that I've learned from those mistakes and moved on. We have, as I said, we have MDs. This is Dr. Amy Harvey, who actually did our program, continues to refer to our office. She referred 35 8 weeks to wellness patients just this year, and she loves the program, and she totally believes in it. And guys, there's MDs out there that believe in wellness. They just haven't been trained on how to deliver it. So when you can work hand in hand, where they do the sickness care and you do the wellness care, there's people out there, not everybody, there's some real jackasses out there that don't believe in chiropractic, that don't want to work with chiropractors, that there's some real gems out there that truly care about their patients. Okay? So what I want to do now is I want to jump into how you can learn more information. And by the way, I just want to show you something. There are a couple of different websites that I want you to know about. One is this website here. I'm just going to log in. We have, and if you haven't been to it, we have a patient-driven website. And write this down. It's 8ww, the number 8ww.com. That's the website that we've created for patients, okay? This is the website we've created for all of our doctors. So when you become an 8 weeks to wellness center, you get a username and password that gives you access to this. And the first thing I want to show you is we've created a 2-day training that we have done in our office. So we want people to come and see our office and see how we practice, meet the patients that go through the program, see how we do our fitness. You're more than welcome to do that. You can contact me if you ever want to visit our office. We do that the first Thursday of the month where you come, you spend a Thursday afternoon with us, and then you stay for the orientation that we do for our patients. We do that on the first and third Thursday of the month. And then if you so desire, you can even stay and come in the next morning on Friday morning and work with the trainers and just see how we do things. But this is, we professionally videotaped our whole 2-day training, so you have this online to you. So we go through the orientation, we go through the background of the program. We have patients that come in and give us testimonials so that doctors in this segment are asking the patients questions. Why did you do the program? Why did you continue on? This is my favorite segment out of the whole 2-day process because it's real. We talk about what a patient will go through on 8 weeks to wellness, how your CAs need to handle the patients. We talk about how we do the marketing, how we do our functional fitness, how we lay out and design our 8 weeks to wellness centers. So this is the whole training process, and you can do this from the leisure. We also have an implementation plan. So remember, I'm really big into implementation. I see this a lot. Chiropractors want to have a wellness practice. They want to have $1 million practice, but they have no implementation plan. So if you take a look, when you become an 8 weeks to wellness center, the first thing that we do is we go through an implementation call, a full hour call of what you will go through. The general time frame is about 2 to 4 months to get fully implemented from the time you start the process to the time you go through your first class. And we have a whole, I don't want to open it now, but we have a whole sequential step-by-step process of how we do that. We all have other things like a practice evaluation that we have you do with your staff, how you launch the program. So we have keys to a successful launch. And every module here, guys, has webinars that are training webinars relevant to that module. And again, I don't have time to go through this whole thing, but you can see some of the modules that we've created. We have the lab work. How do you do your lab work? How do you give your orientation? This is also where you'll find the PowerPoint, right? Not only Dr. Denise doing that orientation that you can watch, but also the PowerPoint slides that you'll customize for your office and make your own. We also have our exam, so it's videos of us doing our exam. How do we run our BIA? How do we do our report of findings? How do we do our wellness score? How do we give every week a person gets a weekly email on 8 Weeks to Wellness? So we've created that as a campaign in Cash Practice where they automatically get an email, but it's a great way for them to communicate our office with additional questions. How do we go over the logbook review? What do we talk about after 8 Weeks to Wellness is finished? So guys, it's all here, and over the 10 years, all the resources, like let me just open up the marketing for just a second. If we've created an ad or another distributor has created an ad, we, like this one right here, this was an ad that we created in the Philadelphia Inquirer. We ran a full-page ad with 3 or 4 other offices. So every ad, everything that we do is professionally designed by a graphic designer. And once we design it and we see that it's a good article or it's gotten good results, it goes into the website so that everybody has access to it if you're a distributor. So if you just take a look at this ad, this is a very nice ad. It's very professional. You don't have to go out and create this yourself. All you got to do is put your office information on it, and it's ready to go. So we have brochures, we have oversized postcards, we have a letter that you can do to your existing patient base when you're launching the program. We have print media ads, we have radio commercials. We just are doing, right now we're doing a CVS commercial. Now think about this, guys. How many of you could afford to run a 30-second commercial 20 times a week on CBS, okay, by yourself? That, I will tell you what that costs. That costs a lot of money. It costs about $10,000 for a 6-week campaign. We split that with 9 other our local offices, so we all paid $1,000. And guess what? We're running that 60 times, right, or 20 times a week for the next 6 weeks. And we literally started that campaign today, and I don't have time to show you the commercial, but it's a pretty kick-ass commercial. So let me just go back to this. We also have a corporate wellness piece, and I want to show you this. Dr. Brad Golacki and I work hand in hand. We meet every single week. We've created a corporate wellness model where not only do you have presentations available to you, so lunch and learns, nutritional presentations, stress management workshops, you can download all of these PowerPoints, but you also have videos of us doing the presentation. We also created a module here for, and this isn't related to 8 Weeks to Wellness, but we do a wellness orientation workshop. So we have every patient or office either attends an 8 Weeks to Wellness orientation or they attend what we call New Patient Wow, which is our new patient workshop. So we give you the workshop, the PowerPoint. We also give you the audios, how we get people to come and attend to our Wow. This is also audios of me actually giving the presentation of our new patient class. So, you know, anything that I think is worth something, we load into this website so you have access to it as a distributor. We also have an online store, and this is where you order some of your marketing resources. This is where you'd order your wellness kits, your blender bottles, some of the marketing stuff that we've created. Like this is a very cool item here. We created a screening banner for the wellness score. So this is something, it's 10 feet wide and I believe 6 feet high, but it's a huge banner that's a backdrop that you can use at a health fair or a corporate screening to do your health. And so it says, do you know your wellness score? Find out in less than 5 minutes. So we run wellness scores that just are BMI, real quick, easy things to do, and we give people those wellness scores at the health fair. Okay? So let me just go back here for a second. I know I'm throwing a lot at you. I just want to show you this last thing, and then we'll wrap this up, and I'll get you some I'll get you information where you can find out more. I just want to show you this last thing because this is something we've worked really hard on in the last year. But we've created a corporate program. So as an 8 Weeks to Wellness distributor, you get access to what we call our 8WW Corporate Challenge. And this is something that we're doing beta testing. We've had 50 doctors that are now being trained in how to get into a corporation. And once you get into a corporation, what you can do is that you can then facilitate this online program for that corporation. So it takes people through the 8 Weeks to Wellness program. So they have their manual, and it's all virtual. They can either have a printed manual that the corporation pays for, or they can have a virtual manual. And this is just like the 8 Weeks to Wellness manual that we have that we give out to our patients that are in their wellness kits. But they can then read this online if they want, or the corporation can then purchase the manual for them so they have the hard copy. So they can either log their 8 Weeks to Wellness program online, or they can do it in a regular 8 Weeks to Wellness program. So this is some of the stuff that we've created, and there's all videos and exercises. So every single week they get released to them 1 week at a time. I'm an administrator, so you see all the weeks here. But they have an initial orientation that goes through the program, and then every single week they have videos. So for example, on week 1, the Moving Better video, They're going to watch the video. It's a 5 to 7 minute video. It's very chiropractic friendly. We talk about exercise from a chiropractic perspective. They can then go and download their workouts. So they can download a mobility prep. So everything that we do with exercise, we focus on 4 things. We focus on cardio, mobility, stability or core strength, and then we also focus on strength training. So all of that is built into the workouts that we do, whether it's online here where they just download their workout. So again, I'll just click on this. This is just a beginner workout. If they're going to do a workout at home, they can just click on this and bring up this workout. If they have an iPad or an iPhone, they can just bring up this workout and print it up, and then they would just go about doing it. And this is something that you will facilitate in the corporation. But guys, imagining this to a corporation and showing this to them, that not only you could come in and do a lunch and learn presentation, but you can facilitate a whole 8 weeks to wellness program within the corporation. And obviously, there's a charge for this. We charge $199 to the corporation per employee, and the chiropractor that's facilitating it gets a percentage. The chiropractor is going to get 10% of the total sales. So, for example, let's say you go in and you sell 28 Weeks to Wellness Challenge programs. You've just created, let's see, about $4,000 worth of income. You make $400 just facilitating a program, and you have access to 20 people that are going through this that are now going to see you as their wellness resource. So again, I'm just going to wrap this up. Hopefully you enjoyed this webinar. I want you to take down a couple pieces of information to get more information. This is just a really cool quote, guys. We've gotten into our school district. I'll read this real quick. Over the past 2 years, Council Rock School District has had the opportunity to utilize Dr. Dane in the Wellness Solutions Center. This has been a wonderful opportunity for our teachers and support staff. Council Rock has made these workshops optional for staff, and in every workshop, we've had at least 50 people sign up to attend. Blah, 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 blah. But what I'm telling you guys is I didn't go in as a chiropractor. I went in as a wellness specialist, and every single year we do in-staff training where the teachers, it's voluntary, but they get teacher credit, just like we get CE credits for participating. So we've been in our fire. We've been, thanks to Brad, really teaching me the concepts through CSK. We have wonderful relationships where we formed with insurance brokers, with our school district, with the local fire, the fire captain, the police chief, right, and the head EMS guy, the guy that runs our EMS services in Newtown, are all patients of mine because of what we do. So how much does it cost? Real briefly, it costs $495 a month to be an 8 Weeks to Wellness distributor. There's a 3-month contract with a year-out clause. So if you're not happy after a year, we tear up the contract and you go on your merry way. But it's a 3-year contract. It's $495 a month. After the 3 years, it's $295 a month. And one of the things I want to tell you is that we decided at 50 distributors that cost was going up to $595 a month. We're at 46 currently. And I don't say that to put any pressure on anybody. I'm just telling you because it's true. I told you I shoot straight from the hip. When we get to 50 distributors, the cost goes up to $595 a month. We're at 46 right now. And what do you get? You get your territory with specific zip codes in your contract. You get all the resources that I showed you. You get the corporate wellness program. You get implementation calls the first 2 to 4 months of the program. We're on the phone every single week for a half hour. We do an hour implementation call, and then it's a half hour a week. And then after that, we do monthly support calls. So after you've implemented 8 Weeks to Wellness and you're up and running, and if it takes 6 months, it's going to take 6 months. But most offices we're finding 2 to 4 months, and then we coach once a month on your 8 Weeks to Wellness program, and then we do support webinars. We have one today. Every year we do 2 programs, one in our office, one at another facility. We did one just a month ago in San Antonio where we bring in speakers like Tony, Ebel. At our last one, we had Robert Silverman, who was wonderful. We had Brad Galacki. So we bring in really relevant speakers, people that are relevant to this whole wellness movement. And just to read a quote to finish up from Tony, he said, "This is the Cadillac of what I've been working for this whole time, and we're in friggin' heaven, getting far better results than 99% of offices, and we are truly getting these folks well. And financially, we're up 40% from last year, with most of it being cash." So I'm just going to finish up. If you want more information, please email the person that you see on the screen. She's my assistant. Her name is Laura. And Laura, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
And so if you want more information on 8 Weeks to Wellness, what Laura will do is set up a specific time and send you an application. And then we'll get on the phone for a half hour, you and I, and we'll decide if this program is right for you. I need to learn about you. I need to learn about your clinic. I need to learn about your history. You need to learn about me. You need to fill out the application so I can see if this program is right for you. Like I said, I don't want to tarnish what it's taken 10 years for us to create. I have $1 million practice. I do really well in my practice. If this is the right fit, it'll feel good for both of us, and if it's not, it won't. And if we work together, one thing I can promise you is I will work harder. If not harder, I will work as hard as you. I won't work harder than you, but I'll work as hard as you to make sure this program is successful in your office. So we're about out of time, guys. I hope you enjoyed this webinar. And again, just to put that email up, and I'll leave this up for a couple minutes, but to start the application process, please reach out to Laura at this email. And it's been an absolute pleasure being on the line with you guys. I hope you have a very, very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and I hope we can do some work together in the future. Guys, if you like this presentation, can you go onto my Facebook page, Dane Donahue, and just Facebook me, guys. Comment, message, put something on my Facebook. I want to know how we're doing. It's the way I get feedback. So if you could respect me and just go on my Facebook and just throw me some comments about today and the information that I presented, I would love you for that. So this is Dr. Dane wrapping it up. I'll leave this on for a couple more minutes so you can write down that information. And I hope to see you guys soon.